weeks earlier, on April 12, 1862, 1 year to the day after Confederate guns opened on Fort Sumter and started the Civil War, Andrews and 19 volunteers, all but one drawn from Ohio infantry regiments, infiltrated North Georgia wearing civilian clothes and stole a steam engine called the General. The raiders uncoupled the gleaming locomotive, tender, and 3 boxcars from the rest of the train during a breakfast stop north of Atlanta, then raced northward up the Western and Atlantic Railroad into the North Georgia mountains at speeds approaching and possibly exceeding 60 miles an hour, cutting telegraph lines and destroying track along the way. Andrews' plan was to drive the stolen train to Chattanooga and wreck the critical rail connection with Atlanta behind him, thus isolating East Tennessee and blocking supplies and reinforcements from the south. The sabotage would, in theory, open East Tennessee to the Union Army and cut off men and materiel from Georgia, Alabama, and the West from reaching Confederate forces in Virginia. In essence, Andrews planned to facilitate with a handful of men the same result Generals Ulysses S. Grant and William T. Sherman would require an army to achieve 2 years later: the reduction of Chattanooga, the seizure of Georgia's railroads, and the ensuing strangulation of the Deep South. If they succeeded, Andrews and his handful of Ohio boys could change the course of the war. Unfortunately for the band of Northern soldiers, they did not count on the determination of the General's young conductor, William A. Fuller, who left a breakfast of steaming eggs and biscuits and chased the stolen train for more than 2 miles on foot before jumping on a handcar to continue the pursuit. Fuller and several compatriots then drove a series of engines through station after station, biting at the heels of the fleeing raiders and preventing serious damage to the railroad until, running out of wood and water a few miles shy of Chattanooga, Andrews and his men abandoned the General and took to the woods. The Great Locomotive Chase, as it came to be known, quite literally ran out of steam. In the hours and days that followed, the engine thieves, as the Southern newspapers ungenerously called them, were hunted down in North Georgia, North Alabama, and East Tennessee, where they were finally captured. But their story was just beginning. 8 of the raiders were tried by a Confederate court-martial and executed as Union spies. 8 others made a daring escape from an Atlanta prison, their pleas for clemency having been coldly dismissed by Confederate President Jefferson Davis, and the remainder were released in a prisoner exchange in the spring of 1863. In recognition of their actions, 6 of the raiders would become the first men in American history to be awarded the newly created Medal of Honor, commonly, though incorrectly, known today as the Congressional Medal of Honor, and they would be hailed in the North as heroes at a time of the war when, frustrated by sluggish, bumbling generals and battered by unexpectedly defiant Confederate armies, the Union desperately needed something to cheer about. Georgia's most famous storyteller, Joel Chandler Harris, would call the theft of the General and the subsequent pursuit the boldest adventure of the war. The Great Locomotive Chase captured the imagination of many Americans during and after the Civil War, its story romanticized and retold down the years in articles, speeches, books, paintings, and ultimately on film. Several of the surviving participants in the raid wrote and published their own accounts or gave public lectures on the subject. Raider William Pittenger milked the tale more than anyone, publishing 4 full-length books and numerous articles on the adventure, even though he was terribly nearsighted and spent the entire chase in a closed boxcar. Wilbur G. Kurtz, a commercial artist and historical consultant on the film Gone with the Wind, who happened to marry William Fuller's daughter, conducted interviews of many of the participants and collected extensive research on the Andrews raid for more than 50 years, now archived at the Atlanta History Center and at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Los Angeles. Local historians and railroad enthusiasts alike have compiled impressive collections of photographs and documents. The Locomotive General is the main attraction at the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History in Kennesaw, Georgia, and, of course, the story has been famously, if inaccurately, told in a swashbuckling 1956 Disney movie starring Fess Parker. In addition to